We are talking high school football. It is playoff time in the tri-state. All three states have entered the playoff phase. And before we get to that, Tom, want to talk about the final game of the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown, which was presented by Mercy Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Meyer. The last one of the 25th year. How'd it go down?
Look at you go there. I didn't even type that in. You've committed these sponsors to memory.
I have.
Yeah, no, it was our third and final game in Northern Kentucky because it was the final week of the Kentucky regular season a week ago. And it was Covington Catholic at Ryle, which is 6A, 5A. And CovCath is taking some momentum into the postseason. They kind of handily defeated Ryle. But those are two. They both went to the state quarters in their respective classes last year. And Kentucky's really different this year. So it starts tonight, but I'll hit on this a little later. But you used to play – like 4 would play 1 in your own district in the first 2 rounds, 3 would play 2. Now they've paired up districts with districts that are outside of Northern Kentucky. So
Gotcha.
There are some brutal. So there's a lot of teams. And what I'll hit on tonight are just teams that I think in Northern Kentucky you should pay attention to in the postseason. But I presume we want to start in Ohio, correct? So
yeah.
Round 2, and I'm going to go to the Division I, Region 4. These are the quarterfinals. And how about the rematch between Moeller and St. X? I mean, it was 20-17. Actually, Moeller needed a TD with 5 minutes left from Jordan Marshall on a 29-yard pass reception, and he's the GCL South Player of the Year. He's led the league in rushing and scoring, and he ran 17 times for 130 yards in that game. But X was up 17-13. So, and I guarantee you, Nick, and you've played the game, you get it. You know Coach Mark Elder of Moeller looked at those pairings and said, no. Not St. X. Not in the second round. I mean, you just don't want it because they're league rivals.
Yeah.
X, don't forget, X is just 2 years removed from winning a state title during 2020. And I'm going to take you back to when they won it previously, back in 2016. They started the year with winning on the road at Fairfield. They were only 5-5. They were 4-6 this year. They started the playoffs winning at Fairfield. Any deja vu there? I don't know. We'll find out. I still think Moeller is really, really good. But St. X has Chase Herbstreit, son of Kirk. He's in there as the quarterback. He did not play in the first meeting. So we'll see. That's an intriguing matchup, certainly. Game sold out in 10 minutes. It's at Shea Stadium in Norwood. How about Elder? They've kind of – I'm going to tell you, Lakota West and Elder have kind of – I don't want to say flown under the radar, but because Moeller's been at the top so much, this Elder team's really good. And they get to face former coach Tom Grippa. He coached the Panthers from 87 and 96, went 84 and 24, and then Doug Ramsey took over, and he's been there ever since. Milford's 9-2. Tom Grippa's a really good football coach. They throw it around. But this Elder team, I think, is really, really good on both sides of the ball. And it'll be interesting. They're both 9-2, kickoff 7 o'clock tonight at the Pit. Elders won, a couple games, and they've played really, really well. Their only 2 losses are to Moeller. They fumbled on 3 consecutive possessions in the first half. That'll kill you. And they lost by 3 at number 1 Lakewood St. Edward. So this is a good Elder team. How about Lakota West, undefeated, hosting Princeton? They're probably going, do we want to play Princeton
we
again?
Do it again, yep.
Yeah. They got them 31-7. This West team, Tom Bolden, unbelievable. He's been to the last 2 regional finals and has got a shot to get there again this year. So that's at West. And then Mason, kind of another team, 9-2, they're at 8-3 Springboro. So there are some really good, at least on paper, quarterfinal matchups in D1 Region 4. D2, everybody's kind of waiting for Winton Woods to play Kings again, right?
Right.
It happened last year. Winton Woods won the state title. They haven't lost this year. And Kings got an interesting one tonight. The Withrow comes to Kings. So that'll be interesting. How about your Baden Rams?
Yeah.
Take on Richmond. It's at Hamilton. This is a really good Baden team. Western Brown's still in there. But this is when you start after tonight is when you get to the regional semifinals, that's when you really – you make it that far, you've got to do something right, and you're a legitimate contender to make it to the state Final Four.
Yeah, you really do. And lots of, it surprises me that the second round in Ohio, the tough matchups, like you were saying with Moeller and St. Taylor, I think they knew they were probably going to meet at some point, but with the second round, you want to go through that in the second round, that's got to be a little brutal on the schedule there.
Well, you don't, and nobody thought St. X would probably finish 4-6. I mean, they were the 9 seed, So when the seedings come out, you look and you go. So for those, and I'm one of them, for those who are proponents of fewer teams in the postseason, if it had gone back to only 8 in the region, think about this: X wouldn't have made it.
Right.
I mean,
right.
so and that's where the coaches, that's their argument, and I understand their argument, But I would also tell you, St. X, they lost 24-21 week 9 at home to Cleveland St. Ignatius. If they won that game, they'd have been in the top 8. I know we could argue that all day, but in Kentucky now, almost everybody gets in. I'm going to tell you some teams to watch out for. I think in Class 1A, Newport Central Catholic, they're 8-2. In Class 2A, Beechwood, 2-time defending state champs. A season-ending injury to Mitchell Berger, who's an outstanding – you hate to see that.
Right.
Knee injury. He's really a guy that I think has been a main catalyst. But I still think Beechwood's still got enough talent in 2A. And I got to be honest with you, Nick, it's going to be really tough. I mean, coming to Catholic always in 5A, Highlands in 5A. But here you go. If Covcath wins tonight, they will likely play, if the seedings hold up, undefeated Frederick Douglass, who most people think it's Frederick Douglass in 5A and everybody else. They have scored 50 or more points in 7 of 10 games.
Wow.
I mean, so they're really, really good. 6A, I mean, you got all those big Louisville schools. It's going to really be tough. If somebody wins a state championship in Kentucky from Northern Kentucky, and we always have contenders, and Highlands is one. Now, they might get Cooper's at Scott County. If Highlands wins, see who wins that Cooper-Scott County game. Scott County would be favored. They're 9-1. Highlands would have to play Scott County round 2. So, I mean, there are some really tough early season matchups. And in Indiana, hard to believe we're already to the sectional finals. And surprise, surprise, East Central and Lawrenceburg are still going. East Central tonight has a home game. Lawrenceburg's at home. So, they're contenders every year. And it's, once again, we say it all the time, there's some really good high school football played here in the tri-state. And tonight will be no exception. And here we go, Nick. Hard to believe. Week 12.
Yeah.
And the weather still looks – I mean, are you kidding me?
It's wonderful. I heard that forecast coming into this morning, and I was like, this is the only time I think it's been perfect. It's literally been perfect. The rain looks like it's holding off until Saturday. We don't have any of those Saturday games happen that I'm aware of, so this is awesome.
Well, and as you know, as you get farther into the postseason, and it's in college football, the NFL, all that, weather, the elements can become a huge variable. And I like at high school, at least, certainly, when you get to December and you're in a state championship, maybe a little snowfall, okay,
yeah.
That's kind of cool. But right now, I don't want rain. You want the better the conditions, the truer the matchup. And for me, it's clearly indicative of that team was better than that team instead of, hey, they couldn't run, they fumbled, fought. Of course,
right.
It's turf now. There's no such thing as mud anymore. But you know what I mean. When there's rains and wind and cold and all that stuff. So, yeah, if you're going out to a game tonight, enjoy it. It looks perfect.
It does look perfect. There's lots of action. And unfortunately, Bridget, with her vacation, she's out on a beach in Mexico enjoying her time. I know she's missing talking to you. I thought about trying to call her. I don't know what the time difference is for her where she's at. But I thought about, maybe we could pipe her in here so she can get her Tom Gamble fix. But she's not here for the high school Uber. I'm sure she wouldn't have been able to.
She would not answer our call. There's no way. Come on. Are you kidding me? Now, we got some problems here with our Bearcats and our Bengals, right, Nick?
Oh, we do. Both of them coming off those losses. UC, unfortunately, fell. And what we thought was going to be, even though they were 3-point underdogs down at UCF, we thought that UC would be able to pull that out because, UCF didn't look extremely good in their past games. But, of course, that game always played hard. Bearcats fall there. And then Bengals, I don't even know what to say about that Monday night debacle. And this, I grew up a Cleveland Browns fan, and even I'm going, what are the Bengals doing? Like, the Browns aren't this good. It's crazy.
Well, I'll quickly on UC. I think they've still got everything in front of them. I mean, if they still have to play East Carolina, they still have to play Tulane. I mean, so they still, and I think you just have to remember, 9 players in the NFL
right
from last year's team. You can't get caught up. Last year was, honestly, that's one for the record books. That's one for the memories, right?
Yeah.
This is still a good football team. And I thought when they struggled on offense, when they took the lead late, I thought, okay, just stop Central Florida, you win. But it's a different year. We'll see what they're made of. The Bengals, I mean, I don't know what and you're right. And you mentioned the Browns. They are. Let's be brutally honest. They are not good.
They're not.
I mean, they're not a good football team. Now they did some things. They were decimated by injuries too.
They play. The Bengals played against a backup secondary the entire game,
Correct.
and still with T. Higgins and Boyd. Granted, you had Chase out, but still, those are 2-1 receivers. On any other team, they could not do anything against a backup secondary. It's crazy.
Well, and I think you just brought up what the most puzzling is. Yes, Jamar Chase, and he's a huge factor. But come on, it's not like you don't have any other weapons. Nick, they still can't run the football.
No.
They can't from time to time. The offensive line 1 week looks okay and then looks horrendous. I just think they just are not in sync for whatever reason.
Yeah.
They just don't look good. I mean, 0 points at halftime, and they looked bad. I mean, they look bad. So is it prime time? Is it clean? I don't know what it is. And, everybody got all geeked up. They beat Atlanta. They should do the same thing against Carolina. But they're 0-3 in the division. I mean, they've lost the first 3 matchups with Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Cleveland. I don't know. They've got time to turn it around. They're heading to the bye week. But now they're starting to get some key injuries. I don't know.
Yeah.
Last year, I think you can't lose sight of they got hot, they got some luck, and they took advantage of it. It is hard to win at that. I mean, it just is. And this it's going to be very interesting how this season winds up.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing they got going for them, I guess you could still say, is that around this time last year, it was a similar record. And like you said, they hit their stride. They didn't get bit by that injury bug as much. I mean, losing Awuzie for the season is
huge.
Horrible. It's huge. He's been their best player on defense. And it's.
But don't forget this. You still have to play all the divisional teams again.
Yep.
You've got the Chiefs. You've got the Bills.
Oh.
I mean, so you look at the back end of that schedule. I mean, it's much more difficult. And those are teams. I mean, most people believe those are the 2 best teams again in the AFC. I mean, so it's, so the schedule gets more difficult in theory down the stretch. They're going to just have to get it together. I mean, they just don't look at Monday. That was brutal. That was brutal.
It was. So we're going to have to figure out that they're going to have to figure out something again.
Yeah.
If they can, I think a lot of these problems would be solved if they can figure out how to run the ball. I mean, having 36 yards total rushing offense.
There's a lot of.
Oh my gosh,
honestly,
it's awful.
There's a lot of teams. There's a lot of teams like that. If you can't run it, you can't rely. You can't drop. I don't care how good your quarterback is.
Exactly.
And Burrow is really, really good. You can't drop that dude back there 50-plus times every game.
Yeah, especially behind a suspect offensive line. It's just not
Correct.
a recipe for success. So
not a good formula. But I do know this. You can go out and enjoy some high school football tonight and great college football tomorrow. I can't wait to see Tennessee at Georgia.
Tennessee at Georgia is going to be a fun one.
Absolutely it is. Well, you have a great weekend, and it's a great night. It'll be interesting to see, and we'll talk about it next Friday. We'll be in the semifinals of the regionals and some of the other states moving along, so we'll see where we stand.
Perfect. It's always a pleasure. We'll talk to you next week. And Bridget will be Bridget will not be back, so it's just me and you again next week, so we'll have some fun.
What kind of deal? Honest to God, back in my days at 96 Rock, I don't think I signed that same contract. I don't know.
Yeah,
I must have not read the fine print.
She banked her vacation days right, or she's in under the table with somebody. So,
we'll just leave it at that. Yes.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend, man.